Yeah, hi, it's Jackie here from the LGFA. Another Zoom call coming your way, and my very special guest this afternoon is former Mayo goalkeeper Yvonne Byrne, affectionately known as Crazy. So, Crazy, will you tell me how you got that nickname in the first place? How are you, Yvonne?
Well, thanks.
What an
Um,
intro!
God, I don't know. I feel far from crazy at the minute, or maybe I'll go crazy. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think it was just years ago, actually, when we started to play football. Everyone seemed to get a nickname. It was probably because I was the quiet, shy, one in the corner, not saying much, and they probably just put it on me. And
All right, yeah.
I'm going to run with that one.
A likely story. Yvonne, great to have you on. Four-time All-Ireland winner, All Star, and overall legend in all our eyes. So great to have you. Yvonne, we're just chatting before we started recording here. Your career, you're predominantly known as a goalkeeper of some renown, but it didn't always start like that. You were out the field in 1999 when Mayo made that big breakthrough.
Yeah, so I would have been centre back in the '99 final, and I suppose goals was the furthest thing from my mind. And I would have played a good bit of my career out the field. I think it was when the sin bin came in, they gently pushed me back into the goals, or maybe when I was getting a bit older, one or the other. So yeah, I would have started, and kind of all the finals we would have won, I would have been out the field, which was great experience. And then, as I said, I got a bit older, then they shoved me into the goals.
What do you remember of that 99 breakthrough, Ivana? Because you might have noticed we've been looking back at past games and we featured Cora, very good friend of yours, obviously, and Mary Kerwin from Leash from the infamous 2001 game. So, but that was sandwiched in between a double in 99 2000 for you guys, and you come back and won it again in 02 03. But the breakthrough moment must have been massive, Yvonne.
Yeah, it was huge. And well, I was really young at the time. I was only 16 in '99 for the first final. And it was just kind of a whirlwind. I was only in late '98. I came into the senior panel. And next thing, we won the semi final. We're in All Ireland final. And I'm like, gosh, this is great. It's going to happen every year. And kind of went with it. When you were younger, you didn't really think too much about it. You're just, cool as a breeze, just take it as it came. And it was funny because my sister at the minute is just in the middle of putting all our VCRs or all of the VCR tapes onto a memory stick. So
Brilliant.
she's transferring them at the minute. So she's doing that. I think she came across an interview that I did with Jim Fahey or something down in Hollymount, and he must have said, "Well, Yvonne, how are you feeling about the final?" I was like, "Sure, it's just another pitch with two goal posts, And I was like, would be thinking that now, and all the nerves and everything else. But back then, I suppose you just took everything in your stride, so you did. And maybe it was the youth and naivety of it all, but just kind of got on with it. And next thing we're in a final, next thing we won, and the celebrations were unreal. And got back again in 2000. And at that stage, then you're kind of thinking, this is the norm. Sure, this is going to happen every year. And I suppose I was lucky because when I joined the team, was straight into the All Ireland final, winning. I was like, this is great. There's some of the other girls like Denise Horan and the Heffernans and Sinead Costello and Leanne and those girls. They would have had their struggles like for years before that, trying to make the breakthrough in semi-finals and lose in semi-finals, and they had all that heartache before getting to that point. Whether I never experienced that, but anyway, in hindsight, I made up for it for plenty of years after.
So tell me about the journey then to goalkeeper, because obviously you weren't the goalkeeper in 2001, and Cora spoke very honestly about that moment towards the end of that match, which was heartbreaking for Mayo and obviously ecstatic for Leash. So just to explain those few years to me, Ivana, and how you eventually became nailed down goalkeeper.
Yeah, so I suppose I would have played centre back in the '99 final. In 2000. I would have been centre back as well. In 2001, I did my cruciate, so I actually missed out in the final in
Okay.
2001. Denise Horan was our keeper at the time, which like one of the best keepers that ever played the game. She was outstanding. And then 2002, 2003, I played in defence as well. I think I was retired a little bit to cornerback. Maybe I was making my way towards the goal. And then Denise actually retired at the end of 2003, I think. So she didn't actually play 2004. So kind of from between 2004, 5 and 6, we would have had different goalkeepers in and out. We didn't really have the one replacement for Denise. We would have had different girls. I think Linda Connolly was her successor at the time. And then in 2007, as it happened, I actually was playing a little bit of soccer at the time in 2006, out the field as well. And I think it was John Mullen that got me in. It was Mayo League team. We ended up winning the FAI Cup in 2006. But our two first choice keepers were gone. And one of them was Tria Connolly, who used to play for Sligo.
Yes.
Yeah, and she would have had international experience. And then there was another girl, Fiona McLaughlin from Mayo, and she would have played underage international. So two really good goalkeepers we had at the time for soccer, but they were both missing for, I don't know, was it a quarter final or semi-final of the cup? And I think it was Emma's dad, John Mullen, who would have been involved in the 99 team. He suggested, oh, sure, they put Yvonne in goals for stopgap. So in the goals, I went for soccer as a stopgap, and I was left there. So in 2007, when I went back to football, I think it was Frank Brown came in that
Frank
year.
Was manager then, yeah.
Next thing, he got the brainwave to put me into the goals. I suppose at that stage, maybe I was thinking, well, she's not going to make it out the field anyway. I might as well make use for the goals. So, yeah, I was kind of launched into goals in 2007 and thrown in at the deep end a bit, but kind of enjoyed the new challenge as well, because I suppose in 2005 and 2006, after Finbar left, I would have been in and out of the team. I would have struggled with fitness, and I would have played league matches and maybe been dropped for championship or played some championship matches or been coming on off a slow sub. So I went from kind of being a mainstay and a starter on the team when we were winning All-Irelands to change in management and, you know, not really making my place. And then in 2007 was putting the goals, and I suppose the rest, then I was kind of in the goals for the rest of my career. And I made a cameo in 2012 and 2015, I think, out the field as a forward. So I don't know what that was about. There must have been stuff for numbers or something those years. But other than that, then I was kind of in the goals, and it was great because it was such a challenge for me then, because I was just constantly learning and evolving as a goalkeeper, and because it wasn't something that came naturally to me or something that I did from a young age. It was a challenge, but I suppose maybe that's what kind of kept me so interested in it for so long.
You made quite a fist of it. I mean, you were a serious goalkeeper, Yvonne. So were you learning all the time between the sticks? Because if it's a position that's not natural to you, I'm sure you're picking up things all of the time. Or was there anybody, maybe, did you have a goalkeeping coach? Were you working with anyone one-to-one?
Yeah, so when I went into the goals initially, they wouldn't have been a goalkeeping coach as such. A selector might come and kick a few balls at you, or you might have done a few bits yourself. Yeah, old school. But I remember asking Eugene Lab at the time. He would have been in working at Denise when we were successful in kind of successful years. So I would have went off and got a few sessions from him myself. And then kind of as the years progressed, then I think it was really, I suppose, when I started to learn my trade fully as a goalkeeper was when Colin Carney came in. He came in 2013 with Peter Clark as a goalkeeping coach. Colin is from Dublin. I just learned so much. I think that's kind of really when I started to apply myself and learn so much about the game when Colin came in. And he was excellent. He was there every session, and I was getting goalkeeping training the whole time, and he was brilliant. And then we had another guy in there at kind of Frank's time as well, Paul, and he was excellent as well. He's from Mayo Abbey, and he brought me on again. He would have been in and out of Mayo squads throughout the year. He would have kind of been understudy to David Clark and Robert Henley. He'd kind of be on the verge, so he would have played Mayo juniors. So I was really lucky. Yeah, but it was probably Colin that really kick-started the progression with the goalkeeping. And even in 2017, my last year playing, like I was just constantly learning. There was just bits and pieces, and even like that, looking back on videos, you'd be like, oh geez, I should have done this or I should have done that. To be nearly kind of coaching yourself, then kind of knowing the difference. So yeah, it was kind of just evolved over time, I suppose, really. And I think any goalkeeper will tell you that there's times where you're lucky enough to have a goalkeeper coach, and then there's other times where you can paddle your own canoe. But that kind of suited me as well, because I like being involved in the team. I like taking part in the team trainings as well, and not just being isolated off doing the goalkeeping stuff. So it was nice to have a mix of both.
Did you ever ask any of your predecessors for any advice, Yvonne, or the likes of Denise, and considering all that she'd gone through, the highs and the lows at any stage? Did you chat to her at any stage?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to think. I think Denise might have even given me a session in the early days of when went in goals. Seems so long ago now, but now that you mention it there, I think I might have even got a session or two off Denise early on when I was in the goals. Um, so yeah, it was all something I was kind of interested in because even when Denise is in the goals, we'd be messing, and you might step in. If Denise is somewhere, you might just step in. So I probably had it in the back of my head somewhere. I don't know, maybe subconsciously. Um, and I'd be always kind of talking to Denise and asking her stuff when she was in the goals, and being a defender, I suppose you had that kind of relationship anyway,
Sure.
where you just had a respect for the goalkeeper because, well, they kind of had your back as a defender.
And Yvonne, what do you remember? And I keep harping back to it, but it was just such an interesting game, the 0-1 final. I mean, you missed out, unfortunately, that year. Were you at it? Were you well enough to go? Were you at the game? What do you recall of it?
Yeah, so my cruciate was gone, and I was training all year, trying to build up the muscles around it to make it, I suppose, stable enough to get some game time. So I spent most of, I think it was around the May, I did my cruciate, and instead of going off for the operation, I was trying to build it up to see if I could get playing. Because obviously we were after winning 2 All-Irelands in a row, and I was playing on those teams, so I was thinking, geez, I want to be part of this. I don't want to miss out. So I would have been training, but it was a funny year for me personally because I was training away and I was fit to train and I was playing challenge matches, but next thing the leg would just go from underneath me and it'd be gone like that, and I'd be back to square one rehabbing it, and it was a constant cycle like that for the whole of 2001. So I would have been togged out for the 2001 final as a player, and I probably would have been fit to play a few minutes of a match if the match was going our way, or I don't know if that was needed. But I think in hindsight, looking back, and even I remember talking to Fimber, I think it was a gamble too much for me to be on the field for him, because I was defender and he was thinking, well, if I put Yvonne on the field and the knee goes, which it was going all summer, if the knee goes underneath her, that's the forward gone by her and possibly goal opportunity or goal chance. So it was one of those things where, was I worth the risk? And I wasn't really. So I was on the bench that day, and I was very much part of the panel and part of the whole setup. But I remember just watching the final, and you were just so into it, and it was going one way, it was going Leash's way, and I think we got on top then. And then just the final kick of the game, you're just so helpless when you're on the sideline, and you just want to be out there, and there's nothing you could do. And when Leash got the free and Mary stepped up, I think we all knew that was curtains at that stage, and it was just devastating and heartbreaking, for us as a group. And it was probably the first big loss. We'd really been on a roller coaster upwards to that point, and then just hitting that, we just came down with a bang. So we did, but I suppose that's part of sport as well. And
Yeah.
Denise and Cora would have come in for a lot of the flak that, and probably took a lot of the shine away from the rest of the group. While they say people take accolades sometimes, like player of the matches, and they take credit for great wins, and that Denise and Cora took a lot of the deflection of that loss away from the group, because we hadn't really been going well in 2001, and there was a lot more, there's a lot more that everyone could have done that year, not just, it wasn't really that mistake. Well, that was highlighted. So much more could have been done throughout the year to ensure that we were in a better position at that stage.
Yvonne, it was a testament to your character to come back from that injury and that the upset of that year and the uncertainty of that year, to come back then and win 2 All-Irelands in a row and that group. And I think Cora was talking about how one of her greatest moments was herself and Denise on the steps, 12 months later. The difference, night and day between the heartbreak of 0-1 and the ecstasy of 0-2. So that must have been a very, very satisfying All-Ireland for you in 2002 then.
Yeah, definitely 2002 was one of the most satisfying All-Irelands, because we'd experienced the heartbreak of losing the final the year before, and we just came back determined and probably stronger, fitter, more prepared than we ever were, really. As I think we might have even won the league in 2002. We just came back with a complete different focus than we had in 2001. And it was great, and it was especially nice for Denise and Cora, because
Absolutely.
personally they'd been through so much and they'd taken so much of the flack for the loss we had, that I think it was just very satisfying to come back and win 2002. And then again, of course, we were so fortunate in 2003 to get another. It just seems like a lifetime ago now. So
yeah, you were fortunate to play in that era, which was the golden Mayo era. Yvonne, when you look back at it now, do you kind of appreciate how good a time it was?
Yeah, it's funny because, as I said, at the time you didn't realise. You're just like, oh, this is going to happen forever, and you're just going from training to training, and then winning All Ireland, celebrate back. You were just in a cycle, so you were, and you didn't realise how, I suppose, fortunate you were. And as I said previously, you know, I didn't have all the heartache that the older girls had that stage. It wasn't until the struggles we had the few years after you appreciated what an opportunity it was to play in an All-Ireland final, and how blessed we were to win All-Ireland finals, and how there's girls there that would give their right arm just to play an All-Ireland final and to win even one. And we were lucky enough, we snuck in 4 at the time. So it's probably something you don't think about until you are finished. And even when you are finished, you're kind of thinking of the ones of we could have won more.
The ones that got away, yeah.
Yeah. But
do you know what game I often recall, Yvonne? The one you played against Dublin up in Breffni. Do you remember the semi-final?
Yeah.
That was an incredible game of ball. Like, you were that close again that year, you know?
Yeah, that was 2016, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? The year before you got to the final, yeah.
Yeah. And again, we just probably a little bit green that we didn't see out the semi-final that day. And yeah, I suppose 2017 made up for it a little bit, but yeah, it was just another opportunity lost. So it was. We were actually going a lot better in 2016. We were going a lot better than we were in 2017. So we were, as it happened. But yet Dublin just pipped us on the day that day. Yeah. But again, it was one of those great games for the neutrals. It was a high-scoring, open game. Well, I'd be the opposite. I'd be giving out about these games because I prefer to play in a game that ends 7 points to 6, but we win, you know.
The feeling when Sinead stood over the free in Breffni, Yvonne, she came in from the touchline probably a little bit, as you know, she's
good forward.
as she's a master of her craft. Did you have that feeling similar to the Mary Kerwin one in 01 that this was going over, or did you think Sinead still had a little bit of work to do to slot it from where she was?
Probably a little bit more, that she had some work to do. Like, as in, Sinead doesn't really miss too much, so she doesn't. But at the same time, it was a nice bit out. It had to be at least maybe 30 yards out. It was out the sideline. It was a way tougher free. Mary's was kind of in front of the post.
Yeah.
The hooter was gone. It was, it was inevitable. There was nothing whether you're just hoping, well, maybe she'll miss kick it or screw off the outside of her boot or come off the post. There was a little bit of hope, but I don't think we'd any hope in 2001. But as it happened, it didn't make it. It was the same result.
Yeah. And you got back to Croke Park, as you say, in 17. Yvonne, that was an interesting game for you as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. As I said, it would have been grand if we just finished after the semi-final on high. But 2017 was kind of a funny season for us because, as I said, 2006 we were actually going really well, and I felt we on a whole we were having a strong season, and we felt confident and good. Whether 2017 was full of ups and downs, we were having very much a mixed bag of results. And it wasn't really till after the kind of final that we got going, and we just got I think we just took Donegal by surprise in the quarter final, because I'm nearly sure they would have been favourites for that game. They were going really well. We just got our matchups right, we got our attitude right, and things kick-started for us from there. And similar into the semi-final, then we just got our matchups right for Cork or up for it.
Yeah.
We lost our way a little bit for the final. I don't know, was it that although we spoke about not letting the final get to us and it being another game, we tried to prepare as best we could. As well, I would have always been conscious of how much we were conceding as a team. And maybe that's just the defender in me or the goalkeeper in me, but I'd have been like, we need to keep that down. Historically, if you go through All-Ireland finals, generally there has been some crack in All-Ireland finals, have been high scoring, but generally any team that wins in All-Ireland, they'll keep their opponents to maybe 12 to 14 points in around that.
Yeah.
So I knew we'd a lot of work to do against Dublin, and it just didn't go our way on the day at all. You know, with the sin bin, I was in the bin myself. I decided I needed a 10-minute break. I think we weathered that storm fairly well because Ashton came on and saved the penalty and did really well. And then we got into half time and we just refocused and came back out. So we kind of weathered that not too bad. But Orla Connell, I think, got sin bin for us in the second half, was it, of the match then? The wheels just came off. The scoreline probably didn't reflect the game as such because they knocked in a couple of goals near the end of the match, and while they were better than us on the day and a lot better, I suppose the scoreline probably didn't do us justice because we had to go chasing the game and it just left us wide open at the back. And Dublin were lethal, like their attack was just lethal that day, you know.
They're a good outfit.
They didn't miss too much, so they didn't. But look, it was one of those games that we were delighted to get back to Croke Park, but I think we didn't put in a good account of ourselves on the day either. I think we could have given Dublin a much better game. It might have been the same result. I don't know. But I don't think, as opposed to semi-final and quarter-final, we didn't just put in a good account to ourselves, you know.
Yvonne, you decided then to slip away from the count. How difficult or otherwise of a decision was that for you, or did you feel that the time was right?
Yeah, I suppose it was one of those things that I toyed with for a good few months, and I made great friends over the years through football, and lots of those were still involved in the football. So when it came to making my decision, I just kind of had to decide what was right for me at the time. I was just after starting a new job with Sport Ireland coaching. I was moving as well, as moving from Mayo to Cavan. My age was going against me as well. And there was just a few different variables, like Dad was sick at home, and there's a couple of different things in my life that was just coming. I was getting to a stage where I was like, you know, there's other things outside of football, and family was becoming really important. And I suppose moving to Cavan, up to Seamus as well, and my new job, there was just other things becoming more priorities at the time, which never really happened at any other stage in my life. It was always football first, and everything had to be paused for football. And I know you kind of have to do that when you're playing county football and you're playing at the top level. In order to give it your all, it has to be your priority, if not one of your priorities. Whether I found it was kind of slipping down my list of priorities, and I was struggling to give it what I know it needed. So in the end, it was an easy. So when I weighed everything up, it ended up being an easy decision, but after a lot of deliberation. And I kind of looked at it from a point of view as, look, I've been blessed. I was there in the good years. I had the success. My family are involved. Mum and Dad were involved for years in the football. It was only recently I was thinking, I was so lucky because a lot of people, when they play inter-county football, they spend lots of time away from their family and they miss family events and things like that. For me, Mum and Dad were such a big part of my footballing career. They were involved in the county setup in kind of 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. And then even after that, they would have went to an open of a crisp bag. There were challenge matches, league matches. They even came on the team bus a lot of the time to say league matches or challenge matches. So I got to spend a lot of time with them throughout the years as a result of football. And it was only recently I was kind of thinking and reflecting back, and I was like, how blessed I was that I had that opportunity to share the football with them. And instead of football tearing me away from my family, it actually probably brought me closer to them.
Brilliant.
And it was stuff like that. I was like, it's things you don't think of. It's the other side of football, of what football can give to you. Like, so stepping away in 2017 while it was tough, and while I missed the girls and I missed being part of it and competing, I think it was the right time. Like, once I stepped away, I didn't miss it. I felt I'd given it the 19, 20 years. I'd given it everything. I got so much from it that I was like, okay, that's a part, that's finished now. So it kind of ended up just being the right time for me. And I know some people they aren't lucky enough to have it that way, that they get stopped through injury, or they're, you know, they're not making squads, or whatever it may be. It might be out of their control that they're finished. But I just like to think I would have liked the fairy tale of winning the 2017 final and saying, yeah, we're finished All Ireland champion. That would have been nice. But do you know what? Getting to Croke Park and getting to play in Croke Park again, and while the result, I'll probably never watch the match again, turn it off anytime it goes on, and pretend it never happened. While all that happened and the result didn't go our way, you know, I got to play in Croke Park. My family were there. I was able to bring my niece and my nephews out the pitch after, and there's so much to be grateful for as well, and thankful for. So I kind of, all that stuff that I'll bring away with me and be thankful for, I suppose.
How has life been since, Yvonne? I mean, you've had your ups and downs in your playing career. You've had your ups and downs since your playing career.
Yeah. So again, it's been up and down, and that's one thing you'd miss about sport is, like, Dad would have been sick for my last couple of years playing football, and he would have been one of my biggest supporters. And I would have found it not being the same really, as well as that, like, as in he would have always been at matches. So going to matches and not being able to discuss it with him, or him being at the match, you know, it kind of was a little bit different, and it was something kind of adapted to. But what I found was football was great. It was a great release. So you went away and you kind of forgot about everything while that time you were playing football, and said football was the most important thing, and someone would annoy you or someone would make you laugh, and it took you away from your life. And I suppose that's the beauty of sport, that it gives you that. And so I was lucky I had that when I was playing. When I finished then, as in, since then, both Mum and Dad would have passed away, so it would have been a turbulent time. I said sport would have been that distraction that you went away, and that's maybe what I missed when both of them passed away, was that distraction of going and playing football, or going training, or having that group of people. But I'm lucky I have a really good family, and I still have a really good group of friends and cohort of friends that would have, you know, we would have pulled together and would have been there for you. So it's kind of been an up and down. As I said, Mum and Dad passed away, which were sad times. I got married last October, which, I said, that was a happy time. And I was lucky enough that Mum was there for that. And now I'm expecting actually at the end of October. So again, something new, and something to look forward to, and something positive. And I know my two sisters are the same. So yeah, you know, it's like banter, it's like football, it's like life. It's a roller coaster. You kind of have to ride through the bad times and just appreciate the good times when you have them. And maybe that's why I was so reflective about football lately, was, you know, I was so lucky that Mum and Dad were such a part of the football. And even my two sisters, like, we were moving stuff out of the house there, and all I could find is scrapbooks and photos, and like, I didn't keep any of those. I was like, I don't care about that sort of stuff. But, you know, like, Mum and Dad, my two sisters, would have went to the bother of collecting all the newspaper clippings and photos, and they're just really nice mementos to have. And
the memory of every one of those pieces. There's a memory in every single scrap. You know, it's called a scrapbook for a reason. Every single piece that you have, clipping, photographed, there's a memory there, which is massive.
Yeah. So, you know, they're fantastic to have, and to know that my family were part of that journey. Like, as in, I was so lucky. I didn't appreciate it at the time, and you're just so caught up in your own world, and preparing and performing and everything else. You don't really think about anything else. But looking back on it, you know, I was really blessed. And while we had some really, really good times of football, with some really, really tough times of football, but really just evolved you as a person. And like, there's so much to be grateful for. I had such good friendships. The experiences I would have went through would have helped me in my everyday life. there's just so much to be said for it. It's hard to put into words, really, and you're still learning. I still draw from experiences, whether in my professional life or my personal life. You'll draw from experiences that you had through football, whether it be good or bad, and that stuff that's intangible that you can't really kind of put a value on either.
Would you be a deep thinker, Yvonne? Because you have obviously the reputation of being the prankster, and you're seriously good crack, and that's on the level. But the way you're talking there, and life experiences, and losing your mum and dad, which is very, very difficult to deal with, and then getting married and now expecting your baby, and I wish you so well with that. It's an incredible experience in its own right, parenthood. Are you a little bit more of a deep thinker perhaps than you thought you were? Might be a way of putting that question.
Yeah, I suppose probably that, like, as in I wouldn't class myself as a deep thinker, but now when kind of raving on here chatting to you, I'm like, well, maybe I am. I think I just like to appreciate kind of what I have or what I had. I probably am a deep thinker. I was always obsessed with football and sport anyway, so even as a player, I was always thinking, oh, what can I do better? How can the team do better? How can I help? What can we do different? So I suppose you're programmed that way, and then now that I've stopped that cycle, it's like you're reflecting a little bit more, because you're not in that cycle of thinking. So perhaps I am, and maybe I just wasn't fully aware of it.
Oh, it's great. I haven't talked to you for a long time, so it's great to see you in such good shape as well, Yvonne. Mentally, physically, everything in your work life as well. Tell us a little about your work life and how that's going, and how COVID has affected it, and how it continues to affect it, Yvonne.
Yeah, so I'm living in Cavan, and I work with Sport Ireland Coaching, who are primarily based in the UL campus in Limerick. But I work out of the Sport Ireland National Campus in Abbottstown in Dublin. So generally I commute to Dublin for work. So the COVID has been a blessing for me in a way. I'm not missing my commute at all. And most of the work I could do from home anyway. It's remote. So in terms of the round trip to Dublin, or the 2.5-3 hour journey, I'm not missing that.
Not simple.
What you would miss is the interaction with your colleagues, and just being in around the office and the buzz around that. You would miss that a little bit. But yeah, so I'm going to be nearly 3 years now with Sport Ireland Coaching. As I said, I just started there in the September of 2017 when we reached the All-Ireland final. And Michael McGeehan would be my boss, actually. He's a big GA man.
Hello.
Donegal, yeah. He was involved. I think he was involved in Tipperary this year. And yeah.
He was. Good lad.
So for his sins.
No comment.
So yeah, I'm blessed to be involved in sport, because it's something I'm just passionate about and I love. So when you're working in it, it makes it a lot easier. Like it doesn't seem like work. And I work with 13 different NGBs, ladies Gaelic being one of them.
Yep.
So it's mainly team sports and racket sports, and I help them develop their coaching programs. And another area of the work I work in is training their coach developers or their tutors, which is really interesting. And maybe that's kind of brought more of a kind of reflection, kind of deep thinker side out of me in recent years. So yeah, it's a real varied role, but it's really interesting role, and it's just something I'm really interested in. And it's good just to see the other side of sport as well, and the mechanics of how it all works. So as I said, I'm there 3 years now, and I'm loving it. And no more than football, just learning the whole time. It's just a constant cycle of learning and evolving.
I wish you well, and I wish you many more happy years there, Yvonne. Are you looking forward to becoming a mum?
I suppose so. I know, yeah. I'm really looking forward to it
now, right? But do you know what you're having? Don't tell us.
I hope it's a baby. Fingers crossed.
Go on.
And actually, congratulations yourself.
Thank you.
Another little boy during the week.
That's it. We're finished now. End of story.
Yeah.
No
Your
more.
poor wife putting up with the four of you.
She's an angel. She's an angel. Did you find it seriously though? And you don't have to tell me. Did you find out the sex of the child?
No, we're
Like,
going to wait and see. Yeah.
there's not many surprises left in life. Oh.
If it's a girl anyway, we're going to have to move back to Mayo so she can play with them.
There's only a few that
I haven't broke the news to Seamus yet, so keep it for QT.
I'm sure he'll be thrilled. There's not many. I was going to say there's not many surprises left in life. Perhaps bar a sin bin in an All-Ireland final, but I don't know.
I've erased that from my memory, so I have.
I wish you so well, Yvonne, with everything. It's truly brilliant. You'll love it and you'll adapt so well. What do you miss most about then? You've mentioned the camaraderie and the friendships and that. Do you still follow the fortunes of Mayo and how do you think they might do this year in that group with Tyrone and Armagh? Yvonne, it's an interesting group.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I probably missed would be the crack and the banter and the fun you have and the camaraderie of being involved in a group. That's the biggest thing you'd miss or you have to adjust to. Well, what I found anyway, and then obviously the routine of the exercise and the physical and mental part of it. So I missed that. But yeah, I definitely follow it. Like I'd first and foremost, I was always a Mayo fan. So even before I went playing at the county for both the men and women's team. So I do follow their fortunes and try and keep an eye on it. And I'd still send the odd text to the girls if they're in kind of finals or big matches or that. So I like to keep an eye on it. Yeah, this year is funny because with the COVID and with the championship being a different structure, like I do think it's a year for an underdog.
Okay.
I think you could just peak for 4 matches and win and kind of surprise everyone. Like I think if I was in the Mayo camp or the Mayo dressing or even the Galway dressing, that's kind of what I'd be saying this year is, come on, let's sneak up on everyone now and take this one while they're not watching. So there's I'd say there's huge motivation there for teams this year is, it's a short season, let's throw the kitchen sink at it and, God knows what'll happen. But Mayo were on the back of, a good enough season last year and I don't think they've lost many players. So, going by the results on last year, it's hard to predict anything this year, but with form and everything, because teams have stopped training for the last couple of months. But you'd be tipping them to get out of their group while Armagh and Tyrone are 2 great teams, and there'll be good games there. They're probably still favourites to come out of that group, and when you're in All-Ireland semi-final, anything could happen.
Absolutely. Last question before I let you go, Yvonne, because you have far more important things to be doing than talking to me, right?
Not at all.
the role of the goalkeeper and how it's evolved, and I've been particularly, I've seen many of them over the years, and even a goalkeeper like Ciara Trant and how she's evolved and improved over the last few years, and Monica McGurk in Meath, who was the All Star last year. I mean, I think I saw her a couple of years previously making what you would call a world-class save in a match. Top corner, it's going in, she gets a fingertip save. The goalkeepers these days, they're pretty damn good, like.
Yeah, I think the standard of goalkeeping in the past few years has gone up and up, and it's probably due to was goalkeeping training and coaching and putting an emphasis on that mightn't have been there previously. It's something we were always familiar with Mayo, like back in 99, 2000, Denise had Eugene Lavin who used to be involved in the men's setup in coaching her. So to me, it's something that should be part of the setup, that should be always part of the setup. I realise it's not, but as you rightly pointed out then as well, whether it be the men's football or the ladies' football, the role of the goalkeeper has become so much more important in recent years. So historically, it would have been just stop the ball from going in the net, and that was kind of good enough for most teams. But now it's kind of evolved that your kickouts are so important, your communication to your defence. Like you could really run the game from it. And Stephen Clucks in the men's game is a key example of that. How your goalkeeper in some ways can control elements of the game. And that has come into the ladies' game now as well. You see Ciara Trant is excellent keeper for Dublin, and you could see it creeping in, and there's more and more really good ladies Gaelic football keepers out there. I think it's due probably to the training, but also the highlighting that the goalkeeper is such an important spot, because I know growing up you didn't want to be stuck in goals, or shove your own in goals, or she's not really good enough to play out the field, or but there was always that growing up, that would have been the way things were. Whether now your goalkeeper is one of the most important players on the field, and I always remember Fimber Egan, our coach from the early years. He would have always said, well, if I didn't have a goalkeeper, I'd pick my third or fourth best player to go in goals. And that's how important he saw the position.
Yes.
So it's great to see so much emphasis being put on it. And I know Ladies Gaelic are programs out there for coaching or training the goalkeeper, and they're always trying to evolve that as well, which is fantastic, because it's only going to lead on to more better goalkeeping and that. So it is great to see, and it's something I always take an interest in, whether you're watching football or soccer or anything like that. You'll be always watching when a goal goes in, you're like, well, could the goalkeeper have done anything there? Or, it's one thing you'd always look at, or could they close that angle better? And it's something I'd always keep an eye on. But yeah, it's good.
Very good. Well, you were one of the very best, Yvonne, and it's great to catch up today, and I really enjoyed the chat and the laugh. I knew we'd have a laugh somewhere along the way anyway. During the course of a 45-minute conversation, it was inevitable anyway, wasn't it? My special guest today, Yvonne Byrne, All-Star, 4-time All-Ireland winner and overall legend. Yvonne, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jackie. Chat to you soon.